Good morning, everyone. Shortly after the initial 8-race strictly stock schedule in 1949, NASCAR had Bill France Sr. renamed its premier division as the Grand National Series and extended NASCAR sanctioned racing to new markets, predominantly in the eastern part of the country. So that's NASCAR's history, first couple of years' history in one sentence, because it's always good to know your audience, and in this instance, most of you know the early background of NASCAR. But I'm going to pick it up with NASCAR out in the West Coast. In 1951, well aware of stock car racing's national popularity, France scheduled Grand National races out west for the first time, scheduling 5 races in California. The Grand National Series returned to California in 1954, and that same year, a new division, the NASCAR Pacific Coast Late Model Division, was instituted. Teams and drivers in regionally and locally sponsored stock cars competed in California with additional events in mostly Oregon and Washington. Pacific Coast Division drivers occasionally ventured east to race in Grand National events, particularly the early Southern 500, which took place throughout the 1950s, but also beginning in 1959, sometimes West Coast drivers would head out east and take a stab at qualifying for the Daytona 500. Marvin Panch and Dick Rathman were 2 of the most successful drivers from the West to succeed early in the Grand National Division. From 56 to 1966, Panch took 21 poles and placed in the top 5 96 times in just over 200 events. Included in his 17 victories, Panch won the 1961 Daytona 500, driving for the brilliant Smokey Yunick, swept a pair of races at Atlanta with the Wood Brothers, and his final win came driving for Petty Enterprises at Charlotte. Rathman competed in 3 full seasons in the Grand National Division from 52 to 54, finishing 5th, 3rd, and 4th in points. Tallied 13 wins. He also ran well in open wheelers, taking pole for the 57 Indy 500, and the only USAC Championship Series race ever held at Daytona. Lloyd Dane, he won the first Pacific Coast Division Championship in 1954, and he again took top honors in 56 and 57. California's Eddie Gray won in 58, 61, and 62. Ron Hornaday Sr. was back-to-back champion in 63 and 64. After falling short in 64 despite winning 10 races, Bill Amick took the Pacific Coast Championship in 1965, winning 8 races that year. Approaching 40, he would semi-retire from racing in NASCAR competition after the season. So by 1966, these series veterans were all winding down their careers. The stage was set for a new group of West Coast drivers to take over the series. And now I know I'm going to fail to mention one or more individuals that probably should have gotten a shout out during this presentation, but I'm going to do the best I can and give as many shout outs as I can. But there's always going to be somebody I'm going to miss. And pick it up with Ray Elder here. I read throughout his career, reading interviews, also talking to family members, that he always insisted that his success was the team's success. He always referred to we during interviews. And so throughout the paper, I'm going to refer to Ray Elder, but I'm also going to refer to the racing farmers. And this is their story. Born in 1952, Ray Elder grew up on a farm in tiny Caruthers, California. He participated in 4-H as a youth, but he was best known at Layton High School and the surrounding area as a dominating lineman for the football team. He was selected as state all-star in his senior year and played in the regional all-star game. Upon graduation, he attracted a few offers from colleges to play football, but he was uninterested in going to college. He preferred a career staying at home, working the land, and a new passion: race cars. Ray's older brother Richard also developed an interest in racing, as did their father Fred. And in 1962, on a 1/5 mile track with a thick wet clay surface at Selma, California, the racing farmers got started. And for the next few years, they competed at California short tracks, gathering experience on the track and under the hood. It did not take long for Ray Elder to make his mark. becoming the Watsonville Track Champion and the California Limited Sportsman Stock Car Champion in 1965. One competitor of note during these early years was Vic Irvin, the father of 1991 Daytona 500 winner Ernie Irvin. The racing farmers were on their way. They preferred Dodge race cars, Firestone tires, the number 36 in blue and white colors. Fred Elder was the car owner on record. He was also a motor parts wholesaler, and he assisted on the race cars. Older brother Little Richard was an imposing man who weighed in at 300 pounds, peaking close to 350. It's not that he wasn't interested in getting behind the wheel in 1962, but he had a tough time doing so, and he had asthma. So Richard was the crew chief. Ray, meanwhile, was still bigger than most racers, coming in at 5'11", 220 pounds when he was in his peak shape. He was built more like a fullback than a lineman. And the early rendition of the racing farmers included a small crew consisting of friends and family. Walt Coop, Bob Turner, Aaron Epperly, Ronald Coop. The engine specialist throughout the racing farmers' existence was Tim Crabtree. And Crabtree and the team built and tweaked their own motors in Caruthers. Spouses also played critical roles supporting the team as well. Elder's wife, Pat, for years prepared dinner for the team. Laura, Fred's wife, and the family grandmother assisted. And the racing farmers for roughly a decade rose early and worked a long day in the fields under the scorching California sun. They paused for a home-cooked meal with their wives and children joining them. Afterwards, it was a long night in the garage, often extending after midnight. On race weekends, the racing farmers would head out to the track. The elders would help pay travel and food expenses, but the crew didn't really earn a salary. Their reward was the team's success. And after each race, they needed to hustle home to tend the fields, get back in the garage, and of course, spend time with their families. The Elder farm consisted of about 220 acres, and the family cultivated crops including alfalfa, cotton, black-eyed peas. In the San Joaquin Valley, one of many regions of California that was flat, hot, and dry as a bone, with world-class soil. Once the manipulation of water was mastered, California became the agricultural capital of the United States and the world. And just south of Fresno, Caruthers was one of tiny little hubs throughout the state that helped feed the country and feed the world. This is where the elders called home and still call home. The family still works the land. In 1966, the elders bought a car from who would wind up becoming their biggest rival, Jack McCoy. And the racing farmers committed to a full-time schedule in the NASCAR Pacific Coast Division. What is believed to be their first race, the racing farmers debuted at Stockton on April 17, 1966, mustering a runner-up finish to race winner McCoy on the quarter-mile track. Jack McCoy and Ray Elder were roughly the same age, started their careers in the series within 2 years of each other, and concluded their full-time careers within a few years of each other. Their hometowns were roughly 100 miles apart. They would race in hundreds of events against each other from 1966 through 1974, producing one of the best rivalries in not only West Coast racing, but in all of stock car racing. McCoy passed away in 2009. Ray Elder passed away in 2011. The very next race the racing farmers entered was a 200-lapper at Ascot in Greater Los Angeles. And on April 30th, 1966, Elder gave the farmers their first victory in the series. Instant impact. As one publication observed, a tremendous job these fellows do too, all the while looking very sharp in their blue and white matching shirts. Elder picked up his second win in his rookie season in a fierce battle with Herschel McGriff at Portland Speedway on September 18, 1966. McGriff, who was recently inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, started from pole and led much of the race. Elder began in the 9th slot and led the final 69 laps to victory, beating the Oregon driver at his home track. McGriff's first automobile race came there in 1945. But McCoy squeaked by and picked up his first championship in the division after the California 100 at the famous one-mile dirt track at the State Fairgrounds in Sacramento. McCoy started on pole and led much of the race until having trouble. But Elder experienced trouble too. McCoy finished 13th and Elder was 15th. Evidently, in the final race of the year, there was a final race scheduled at Reno, but it was canceled. Of course, Elder could have blown an engine on lap 1 and finished further back in the standings, so speculation is pointless. But the tight points battle also could have gone the other way too. If Elder, for reasons remaining unknown, he's not listed as competing in the 14th race of that season at San Gabriel Valley Speedway, later known as Speedway 605. Early NASCAR late model Pacific Coast records can be incomplete, inaccurate, and murky. Many forms of motorsports suffer from this problem, and today research is still being conducted to fill in blanks. In fact, some of you in this room are doing that deep research. And as many are aware, points distribution was and remains a contentious aspect of motorsports, all types and at all levels throughout the globe. Most series over the decades have rewarded consistency. Until the playoff format, NASCAR's Cup Series, for instance, through 2003, adopted that method. And in some cases, consistency can and will overcome dominating seasons. Take Terry Labonte's 1996 NASCAR Winston Cup Series championship. Jeff Gordon won an incredible 10 races. Texas Terry reached victory lane twice, but he won the championship by 37 points. Indeed, in all forms of racing, there are great drivers and great teams who never won a championship despite impressive win totals. Ultimately, Elder's remarkable consistency and commitment to competing in nearly every race on the schedule year in and year out paid dividends in the fall at the season's end. The commitment was critical for the racing farmers in their eventual run of claiming 7 championships in 8 seasons. But in this first year, he finished second to McCoy. Still, Elder was the 1966 Rookie of the Year and also voted as most popular driver. In '67, the farmers replicated their success, again winning twice, both times at Ascot. Elder, like any good farmer, had an expertise on the nuances of soil. Agriculture and automobile racing remain intertwined since the first fair races in the 1890s. The best drivers on dirt are also soil scientists. Ascot, in particular, suited his smarts as well as his smooth yet hard-charging driving style. The 1967 champion Scotty Kane won 5 races, including 3 in a row in the middle of the season. Farmers again took second. But although NASCAR's modern era was still a few years away, Big Bill France and his cohort in Daytona Beach was noticing the strong cast of competitors, exciting races, and sizable crowds in the Pacific Coast Division. In addition, other sports leagues were extending to the west. Air travel was becoming more common, and professional sports leagues began to establish or relocate teams west. In 1967, National Hockey League's Los Angeles Kings and California Golden Seals, based in Oakland, began their seasons as part of that league's expansion from 6 to 12 teams. After years in Minneapolis, the National Basketball Association's Lakers had been in LA since 1961, plus the San Diego Rockets began NBA play in 1967, although they moved to Houston several years later. Of course, the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles in the 50s. After the 1967 season, NASCAR took steps to further increase organization and increase its commitment to NASCAR racing on the West Coast. For example, a handful of permanent officials and administrators were hired with the West divided into competition zones. Under the administration of Bob Barkheimer, Les Richter, and Bill Amick, this trio are among the biggest names in West Coast stock car racing history. Barkheimer was there from the start, working with France and promoting races in the formative days of NASCAR racing on the West Coast. Richter wrapped up a Hall of Fame NFL career with the Los Angeles Rams and go on to becoming one of NASCAR's most respected and longest-serving administrators and served as longtime manager of Riverside International Raceway. And then Amick went from racetrack success to overseeing races. The following year, in '68, despite tallying a series-high 5 wins, it was another runner-up finish in the points, the 3rd in a row for the racing farmers. Evidently, it was tire trouble late in the season-ending Saugus 100 that left them with a 5th-place finish 2 laps down, and so Scotty Kane finished 3rd on the lead lap and claimed another championship. Still more research is needed to fill gaps, as I pointed out earlier. Even with the stronger administration and organization of the series, some 1968 races have detailed and comprehensive statistics, but there are other races where details remained rather limited. At the close of the '68 season, Ray Elder and the Racing Farmers proved that they could compete and win with the best racers on the West Coast in a division that was featuring tougher competition and gaining prominence. The following year, the team would climb even higher. But look at the stats thus far: 52 races, 9 wins, and 33 top fives, and a pair of most popular driver awards. The 1969 season opener at Riverside, as was the case in the past, combined Pacific Late Model Division racers with the NASCAR Grand National regulars, and a few IndyCar stars peppered the field. Elder produced a strong result, placing 7th. Richard Petty won, in his first time racing in a Ford. A.J. Foyt was 2nd. David Pearson rounded out the top 3. 4-time Indy 500 winner Al Unser finished 4th. James Hilton was 5th, followed by Leroy Yarborough, who would win the Daytona 500 a couple weeks later. His crew chief that year was the great West Coaster Herb Knapp, who won 74 races serving as a Cup crew chief. Not in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, but a West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame inaugural member, Knapp wrenched for 6 drivers who became NASCAR Hall of Famers and also worked for a handful of Hall of Fame owners. The following month, Richard, Ray, and their buddies made the roughly 2,700-mile trip from Caruthers to Daytona. After an impressive 8th place showing in the qualifying race, they took 10th in the 500. At the time, it was the fastest the racing farmer had to race in his career. Buddy Baker qualified at 188.901 miles per hour in a car prepared by NASCAR Hall of Fame multiple-year nominee Ray Fox. Speeds at the track were far greater than top speeds at the quarter miles the farmers were accustomed to. So early in the 1969 season, Elder starts to make some noise on the Grand National scene, and after Daytona, the racing farmers had over 2 months to get ready for the Pacific Coast Division race at the 1-mile dirt track at the California State Grounds in Sacramento on April 27th. Elder finished 5th. This iconic track was one of the West's most important venues, and as one spectator recalled, the track was well prepared, with few ruts and little dust. There were multiple grooves with cars running low, middle, and high grooves, but its days were numbered. Great racing ceased at the track after 1970. It is now a shopping center. We've all heard that one before. So many classic tracks stood where stores exist today. Later in the season was a race at Sears Point, a brand new road course 25 miles north of the Golden Gate Bridge. San Francisco, Oakland, Sacramento, and the surrounding wine country of the Sonoma and Napa Valleys now had a premier circuit to call their own. Originally from California, Ken Clapp began promoting races in the 1950s and was becoming increasingly active in the development of the Pacific Coast Division. Clapp helped oversee the track's construction. 20 years later, with Les Richter, Clapp pushed for an annual NASCAR Cup race at Sears Point, and since 1989, Sears Point has hosted an annual Cup event in late spring. The track was built with the future in mind, located away from potential development. The racing farmers won the inaugural. In 1969, they won their first championship. The sign of a strong team. The racing farmers minimized bad days and minimized what happens on those bad days. And the best teams in motorsports history often win championships in the garage during the race, not in the winner's circle. I'm going to pause for a little bit and just show a few slides and then resume. It's one of the early pictures of the racing farmers circa mid-1960s. You can see they're all dressed sharp in front of Daytona. There's Ray Elder's application for his FIA driver's license. As a historian, I love stuff like this. You can't beat handwritten documents, and so I chose to show this one today. There's the three. There's Ray, Richard, and Fred. I believe this photo is from 1969. Just classic picture. And the title of my paper is loosely based on the stock car racing headline from the issue in 1971. Ray Elder put down the Southern Boys and all the other big name drivers to win the Riverside race. I'll keep this one up for a little while. And how much time do I have, Kip? Oh my goodness, I have plenty of time. Okay. Yep, thank you. So now we're going to pick it up in 1960. The Racing Farmers had just won their first championship after finishing second 3 years in a row. And this is really when they start to hit their stride. First up in 1970, the Racing Farmers headed out to Daytona again. They finished 6th out of 31 cars in the qualifying race and took home a respectable 11th this time in the 500. But in the Pacific Coast Late Model Division, which became the NASCAR Grand National West Division, Ray Elder and the Farmers had a banner year. They picked up championship number 2. Although it was close, they nipped Jack McCoy again for the title. Also that year, Dick Bound won a series-high 6 races and 18 starts. Turning 40 that year, the Oregon driver would wrap up his career a few years later with 14 victories. And the future for the series looked bright. Dick's son, Chuck Bound, raced in 2 events at the age of 16 that year. Spoiler alert, the younger Bound won the Winston West title in 1976 at the age of 22. He later moved to the East Coast and won 10 NASCAR North races over 4 seasons, but his career highlight, and a true benchmark achievement for West Coast stock car racing, Bound would become the first West Coaster to win NASCAR's Xfinity Series championship, doing so in 1990. After World War II, California debuted new road courses at Willow Springs and Torrey Pines, Paramount Ranch, Laguna Seca at Monterey, and Sears Point. But it was Riverside International Raceway that became Southern California's capital of American autosport in the 1960s. Riverside was located about an hour's drive east of Los Angeles in the sparsely populated wine-growing desert community in Moreno Valley. The track accommodated all forms of motorsports and attracted domestic and foreign competition, even hosting a Formula One race in 1960. The Golden State's moderate climate attracted all-star events. During the winter months, after the conclusion of their respective seasons, the nation's best drivers towed their race cars west and competed in prestigious and financially lucrative special events in California. It helped develop many of the nation's most successful drivers in all disciplines, including stock car competition. In the 1960s, Golden State driver Dan Gurney dominated against the NASCAR Grand National regulars at the Motor Trend 500 in Riverside. He won in '63, driving the famous number 28 Ford for the great Holman Moody team. Gurney then won in '64, '65, and '66, driving for the Wood Brothers. Then fellow Californian Parnelli Jones broke the streak in 1967, but the Wood Brothers and Gurney did it again in '68. The domination ended after Gurney suffered an engine failure in the 1969 event, and Richard Petty won that year. It was also the first time the King raced in a Ford. On January 10th, 1971, Ray Elder won the Motor Trend 500 at Riverside International Raceway. In a family-built car with a volunteer organization consisting of family and friends. Elder started on row 2 and led much of the event. He passed Bobby Allison and led the final 12 laps and took the checkered flag over 10 seconds ahead. It was a grueling race back and completed it in just under 5 hours. After Allison rounding out top 5 and Parsons, Bobby Isaac, and James Hilton. The race farmers, Dodge, marked the first time in history where the motor 500 drove that Ford was the lane. Jack Farland, at the time, the public relations director at Dodge, was elated and furnished Elder a brand new car for the win. It was a huge victory for Chrysler, especially considering its dominance on the road over years. Elder also won on Firestone tires. The first time car Firestone rubber proved victorious in the series. David Pierce won a race in September of 1968. And it was really fun looking at the press coverage back then. A lot of not just racing publications, car publications, but even the New York Times covered the race. And one of my favorite quotes came from this April 1971 issue of NASCAR Car Racing. The leading Firestone qualifier was 1970 West Coast champion Ray Elder, a good-natured farm boy from Caruthers in the hard West Coast racing belt. And if he's proliferated in the sport like they do in horse racing, Elder's Dodge probably would have gone close at 30-1. Elder told Car and Driver magazine afterwards, our team consists of about 20-25 men and women, most relatives. He went on, we never have time to get anything done. And that was the way it was. As soon as the race was over, the farmers had to hustle back and get back to work on farms. And a lot of times they would talk race strategy on the way, or even right before the event took place. They did it for a decade. And this is really where they really hit their stride. Because not only did they succeed in the Winston West Series, they also succeed in a handful of Cup races as well. And the Riverside one is probably the most famous example. There were other good results too. At the end of February, the Cup stars returned to California following the Daytona 500 to race at Ontario. Completed in 1970, constructed on the site of a former vineyard 40 miles east of Los Angeles, the 2.5-mile superspeedway was the most anticipated and hyped project built in United States Auto Club USAC's history. California Governor Ronald Reagan attended the inaugural event on September the 6th that year. And over 170,000 fans watched Jim McElreath prevail in the 500-mile Champ Car race. Facility near I-10 was close to the I-15 interchange, and it was envisioned to benefit from the nearby Orange County Airport and boost Ontario and surrounding San Bernardino County, because the track was in one of America's most rapidly growing regions. So now there was another West Coast venue for the Pacific Division, or now the Winston West Division, had the opportunity to race against the Grand National, it's now going to be known as the Winston Cup regulars. And this track was much bigger and much faster than any track that previously existed in their division. At the first NASCAR Cup race at Ontario, the Miller Highlight 500, the racing farmers showed that they could produce the power, handling, and driver talent to battle with the Cup boys on a freshly paved, fast, brand new 2-mile oval, finishing a respectable 7th. A.J. Foyt won the race. That June, the Cup Series returned to Riverside for the Golden State 400. This event also became a mainstay every June on the Cup calendar. The race was shorter in June because of the higher temperatures associated with the desert. This race was pretty much either Father's Day weekend or right around Father's Day. Elder almost pulled off the repeat, but he had to settle for second. In 1971, Ray Elder and the Racing Farmers also enjoyed one of their finest seasons in the division, known as the NASCAR Winston West Series. He won a career-high 9 races, including another at Ascot, which was clearly his favorite track. A writer for Circle Track magazine in 1971 observed that at Ascot, the play was prepared just right. It's not a run-of-the-mill, randomly excavated mucky dirt track. Rather, it has an imported clay surface brought in from the cemetery across the street. Track surface real tacky. A wet track, not sloppy. Prepared the way dirt should be. 1971, Elder again topped McCoy for title number 3. Elder also became the first driver in series history to earn over $50,000 in winnings. Applause for my Marco Rubio moment. The youth movement continues in the series too. Young Jimmy Angelo won a race in his first full season competition. He would go on to win 25 races in the Winston West and a championship. And also, phenomenally significant, RJR Backo. Money was coming from NASCAR funding, marketing, promotion versus building up track infrastructures, and sport entered its modern era. This is also critical record-keeping was now becoming much more precise. But it's tobacco money for the sport. The racing farmers in 1972 secured a long-time sponsorship deal with Olympia Brewing out of Tundra, Washington. The car now looked even more sharp, and the racing farmers looked sharper too, sporting new and blue sponsor uniforms. Following year was arguably one of the greatest seasons in the Winston West Series history. But before that, season opener Cup Series, January 23rd, 1972, Elder alfalfa finished fourth at Riverside in the Winston West 500. Beating this time, big name again, Richard Reddy, Bobby Allison, and Bobby Isaac, who won 37 career Cup races. Right behind Elder was Herschel McGriff. On March 5th of that year was the second Miller High 500. Elder finished fifth out of a massive 51-car field. McGriff, right behind him, finished sixth. And the few words about Griff, he's the oldest NASCAR Hall of Famer. Not too many drivers from the Pacific Northwest have a stronger resume. He also won more NASCAR national races before leaving the sport for over 10 years to develop his business and raise his family. He began racing in the Pacific Division in 1965. He raced his first full season in the division in 1972, competing in all 30 events. That was the only season, however, that Elder and McGriff both competed full seasons at the same time. McGriff ran full campaigns from 81 to 89, and he picked up his Winston West Championship in 1986. That 1972 NASCAR Winston West season, again, was one of the most competitive in history. McGriff won 12 races. Elder won 7 races. Dick Bound won four races. He finished third in points. McCoy grabbed 6 wins. He finished fourth in points. All 4 drivers raced in all 30 races that year. What appeared to be the championship separator was that Elder was running at the finish in every race, but one, and his 3 worst finishes came mid-season, a pair of 12th and a 13th. Thereby, huge props again go to the racing farmers for building quick cars and repairing those cars when there is attrition during the race. Back to the Winston Cup Series. As far as top 5 finishes in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, the racing farmers went 3 for 3 in their home state in 1972, and the third top 5 was the sweetest. NASCAR returned to Riverside on Father's Day, June 18th, 1972, the first Father's Day. Elder started 7th and led the final 44 laps, finishing a full lap ahead of Benny Parsons. It probably was the gutsiest performance of Ray Elder's career. His Dodge had transmission issues, and he had to muscle the car to victory. Both of his feet were badly burned and blistered. They raised him tough on the farm. The 1972 season may have been his finest of all in the West Series. He finished with 27 top 10s in 30 races and 7 victories. He was only 29 years old. But the remarkable consistency the racing farmers displayed was not to be in 73. Mechanical and/or tire problems marred their 73 season. And they finished 20th and 21st in the two Portland races. Even worse, they placed 22nd at the first of only two occasions the series raced at Laguna Seca in Monterey. Ken Clapp, always a supporter of West Coast racing, was gaining a stronger presence in NASCAR and pushed for that race. Clapp eventually took on many roles with NASCAR and became the voice of the West for many years. He became vice president of Western operations for nearly 20 years, followed by vice president of marketing development until his retirement in 1999, in which he became a consultant. I can't overstate his importance in promoting West Coast racing, but also just NASCAR's development moving forward. He also helped promote the Japan exhibition races in the 1990s. And it was Clapp and three other gentlemen who really spearheaded the formation of the NASCAR Cup Series in the early 90s. In 1973, the Racing Farmers championship streak ended and they placed third overall, which was their worst finish, third, in the years they were together. Fittingly, Jack McCoy won the championship. Sonny Easley, who won the Laguna race, placed second overall. And the sad side note on Easley, he finished second in the championship on two occasions before perishing in an accident at Riverside in 1978. But armed with Olympia sponsorship, the Racing Farmers stormed back in 77 with another speedy Dodge and outlasted McCoy one final time. Elder finished 58 points ahead. Jack McCoy retired at the conclusion of the 74 season and is currently credited with 54 wins in the NASCAR Winston West division. To be sure, McCoy was one of the most important figures in the growth and development of stock car racing on the West Coast. In Elder's final year of Olympia sponsorship in 75, he picked up his ninth and final career win at Ascot, the same year he claimed his seventh and final championship. That track's days, like others mentioned in this presentation, were numbered as well. And there were a few quotes I wanted to touch on, but I think I am running a little short on time. But the loss of Ascot in 1990 was a big one. Ascot was really as iconic as speedways came in California and on the West Coast. Ontario was gone by the early 1980s. Riverside would be engulfed by sprawl, holding its final race in 1988. You guessed it, a shopping mall was put in. All parts of the country have lost countless racetracks due to various issues, mostly environmentally related: urban and suburban sprawl, noise pollution, road construction. California probably lost more venues than any other state. But with little to show for their existence today, during the era of the Racing Farmers, countless dirt, paved, and road courses served as vital venues in the growth and development of stock car racing on the West Coast and provided exciting racing time and time again in the NASCAR Winston West Series. After the 1975 season, Olympia did not renew its sponsorship deal, and the Racing Farmers decided to return to the fields for the most part. In '76, Elder stepped away from full-time competition. The year also marked the loss of Laura, the family matriarch, and the Elders sold off their racing equipment. He did return in '78 for a final full season in a red number 32 owned by Dave Hill with Bill Morehart as crew chief. And he picked up his final two of 47 wins, the last one coming at now defunct Langley Speedway in British Columbia, Canada. He managed a third place finish behind champion Jimmy Inslow and Bill Schmidt, another up-and-comer who won the title the previous year and would go on to do so in 1979. Ray raced in a handful of races over the ensuing years, but continued to farm the family land and eventually opened a mini mart with Pat. The store closed not that long ago. There's a program from San Gabriel Speedway. I believe this is also 1970. I also love the programs. The older the program, the better. And the advertisements were great too. This one stood out to me. And it's nice to see you have a regional hero with being advertised in the national campaign here with Firestone. And the Racing Farmers preferred Firestone for years. That first Father's Day on June 18th, 1972, Ray Elder won his second race at Riverside, and here he is with his young daughter, Peggy. There's Tiny Richard, just very imposing man and brilliant under the hood. And once Olympia came into the picture, everything just got nicer and brighter and shinier. And I love this hauler. It's just decked out with Olympia sponsorship, with Racing Farmers, Caruthers, California on the driver door, on the passenger door. There's the Olympia uniforms, which look more like pajamas. I've had a chance to see these actually handle these pajamas, these crew uniforms, and they're just awesome. Great color shot. Note Petty's team helping out on the pit stop. And the Elders and Pettys to this day remain friends. I have a great picture of Ray's wife Pat with the King from not too long ago that I should have included. Ran out of time. This is a later picture of the Racing Farmers. Expanded Racing Farmers, more participants now as we're moving on into that heyday period during the 1970s. That last season, he ran without the Racing Farmers. Ray Elder did, and this is a program from the Evergreen Speedway out in Washington State, which still is hosting racing today. In 1990, Elder was selected to the Fresno Athletic Hall of Fame. In 2002, he had perhaps his greatest honor thus far, being selected as a member, with some of the people I listed earlier, of the inaugural class of the West Coast Stock Car Racing Hall of Fame. And here he is. Also in 2006, he was inducted into the American Auto Racing and Broadcasters and Writers Hall of Fame. I think I said that wrong, but I believe most of us know the organization I'm speaking of. And just recently, he was announced as one of the nominees for the Wonderful Motorsports Hall of Fame of America down at Daytona, which has been there, I guess, for maybe, 6 or 7 years. And it's an absolute must-see. If anybody's down at Daytona to go to the races, be sure to check out the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. It's just incredible. In 1975, Ray Elder and the Racing Farmers won a special event at Ascot by an incredible 7 laps. Afterwards, one writer opined, all in all, the 500-mile race for stock cars was a fine race, with the best driver on the West Coast proving his claim. Ray Elder deserves that title all the way. Thanks, everyone.
First of all, we're extremely honored and very excited to have Peggy Elder here, who has flown in from California. So Peg, would you stand? Oh, hi.
Could have done it without you, Peggy.
Do you have any comments you'd like to add to Dan's excellent program here?
Great speech. Good job.
Thank you. I apologize. I know I did go longer than I should have today.
No,
I know we're coming up on the following presentation.
Does anyone have any questions for Dan? I guess not. Peggy, thank you very much for coming all this way. And Dan, thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you, and thanks again, everyone, for coming out and supporting and participating again this year. And everybody that puts this together, really appreciate it. Every year, every year's a slam dunk, so thank you.